Hello to all of our listeners out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 35 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, recorded on July 25th, 2016. Joining me this evening, we have Gavin. Gavin's a business owner, gun enthusiast, hunter, atheist, and host of the Greater Toronto Area chapter of the Tactical Beer Owners Club. Hey, Gavin, how's it going?
Pretty good. You?
Very well, thank you. We also have Tyler. Tyler is an accomplished agitator, ruffler of feathers, and competitive shooter on Doc Holliday's fully ripened Huckleberries shooting team. Now sponsored by Barnaby's Fine Malt Liquor. He's also the co-founder and co-host of the International Liberty or Death podcast, which recently featured me as a guest to talk about Ragnarok Tactical's AR course earlier this month.
Really sorry that it's not even out yet, but it'll be out tomorrow. It's not my fault. It's Matt's fault, the American. They're horribly unreliable people.
We should build a wall.
We should build a wall.
Oh, and a late addition to the show, parachuting in from Southern Ontario, we have Marty. Marty doesn't have an intro tonight because he didn't update the fucking show notes.
What a dick. Oh, you swore first. That means it's cool to swear now.
Yeah.
Marty, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Marty.
We're
How's it
already
going?
live and everything.
We're already live. It's after 9.
Yeah. I mean, we actually started sort of on time this time.
You've actually completely derailed the podcast, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I now have to go back and
Yeah.
re-edit the intro and stuff. It's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gavin, would you like to read some copy?
I would love. You haven't introduced yourself yet, though.
Oh, my name is Andrew. I'm
See
your
what
host.
happens?
Amateur hour.
God damn it, Marty.
When have
As
you ever
always-
made it through the intro anyway?
Screw you, I got it the first sentence this time before I messed it up.
It's true, he did.
You got the date wrong, though.
I got the date wrong, but I ad-libbed the correct episode number, so...
Yeah.
Anyway, my name's Andrew. I'm a libertarian, competitive shooter, gear reviewer at everydaytactical.com, and a firearms instructor.
Then we'd love to hear your feedback about the show, so please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. And if you leave a 5-star review on the iTunes, put whatever you want, 5 stars, and then put down something you'd like me to drink, because that just might happen.
I'm gonna have to create like sock puppet accounts to leave other 5-star reviews because I want to see you get hammered on like Strongbow, like something that's like ridiculously sweet, just so I can talk to you and see how hungover you are the next day.
Well,
Ask me how I know.
yeah, well, trust me, I do as well. I've been on a few cider benders in my day.
So good.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem.
We'd like to remind our listeners to please visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast. Give us a like. We basically don't spam anything. It's pretty much, hey, there's an episode up, or hey, we're going to be on YouTube in a minute with a link. Sometimes that minute is flexible. Time is just your own perceptions of the world around you. It's not necessarily linear. We're going to do what are we drinking? We're going to start on my screen left to right, starting with Gavin.
I am drinking rye and Coke as per one of the 5-star reviews that we got.
Excellent. Tyler, what are you drinking?
First of all, I'm a little like miffed that I'm not first because I was the first person to join the call. Why is Gavin always first?
Google.
Alphabetical?
I'm drinking Rickard's White, kind of my usual beer for the show.
I'm sorry, has that got a Sasquatch on it?
Yeah, check that out. Gone Squatch.
Awesome.
Pretty sweet. This is like the beer is what's responsible for most Sasquatch sightings. I'm gonna guess.
You really have this thing with the Sasquatch, don't you?
It's a great show. Finding Bigfoot is the best comedy on television.
Until they actually find him.
Do you think they're really gonna find him though?
No. But
We talked about this.
Pretty
When they do find him, it's gonna be like the footage will be unusable because he's just gonna be like jacking off in the woods or something, and then he runs away.
yeah. Maybe that's why Matt's always late on editing the show, because he's too busy chasing Bigfoot or beating off with him in the woods.
He does have a really hairy back.
That is truly frightening. Marty, what are you drinking?
MGD tonight.
Keeping it classy, eh?
Trying to.
Didn't even
I
make
have
one
my-
Sasquatch joke.
I got
Not even one.
I'm with you on that. I love that show. I love how, like, the end of every episode, it's like, well, we didn't find Bigfoot or find any signs or evidence of Bigfoot here, but the one thing we can be certain of is that Bigfoot is definitely here.
I know. They always declare it. We found zero evidence, but we can say conclusively that they're here.
Yeah.
Kind of sounds like people that believe in socialism.
Oh my god. It's so good. It's such a good show. And it's on Animal Planet.
I don't know how that made it through the marketing team there, but that's amazing.
It's run for 8 seasons. What are you
At what point do they lose credibility?
What they need to do is get that like ancient aliens dude on the show, so he can just be like Sasquatch.
Oh, Giorgio.
Yeah, whatever.
Closer, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do like a Wicked crossover episode.
They actually do have an episode recently where they insinuate that Sasquatch is like an interdimensional being, and that's why they can never find him, because he like slips in and out of reality.
Amazing.
All right, hang on a second. I was getting blamed for taking this show off the rails.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Well,
I'll fix
Andrew
it.
asked me about my beer koozie.
It was relevant to the beer drinking, and then it wasn't.
I'm sorry. What are you drinking, Andrew?
I am drinking Black Swan's IPA from Black Swan Brewing in Stratford.
A local brew.
Yeah, it'll be a lot more local next month when I move to Stratford.
Well, it's close. I think maybe for next episode, I'm going to get myself a few cans of Thornbury cider. I just toured the cidery with Jeff, another panelist from the show, like last week. It was awesome, and they're going to brew beer there, and they're going to have the patio open. And it's like 5 minutes from my work. I'm going to get like liquored up every day at lunch. It's going to be great.
Nice.
I fully support that plan.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you ever build me a house, can it be in the morning only that work gets done, and then after that, you just take the afternoon off? Or do you do work drunk?
That depends on how you define the word better. So.
Fair enough.
All right, let's move it along.
Before we go into the main topic, and I edit all of this out, we want to say hi to the folks on YouTube. Particularly Byron, Allen, and then Victory, who are with us and commenting on the YouTube chat. If you want to join us for the YouTube chat, that's live Monday nights, usually around 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Check your local listings. No news this week. We're going to go right into the main topic. And the main topic is the Ruger 1022 magazine fiasco. So who wants to do background?
I mean, I could jump on this. I actually have it. It's 22. I don't know what I did with that. I think I left it in the other room. I have a 1022. Most gun
Here's
owners.
one.
There you go. There's a dressed up 22, an assault 22, if you will.
Yep.
Basically, rimfire rifles, magazines designed for rimfire rifles have no magazine capacity limits, whether they're semi-automatic or not. It doesn't matter. However, pistols, including rimfire, if they are semi-automatic, are supposed to be limited to 10 rounds. And about 9 years ago, Ruger released the Ruger Charger pistol, which is essentially a 1022 but with a short barrel. And the reason why it was marketed as a pistol was to get around the stupid gun laws in the United States, where it would otherwise be classified as an SBR and require a $200 tax, and you have to register it, and that would not sell very well. So by marketing it as a pistol instead, they got around those laws. Unfortunately, it screwed us here in Canada because it created a legal gray area where you had magazines that were marketed for both a pistol and a rifle, and the RCMP couldn't figure out how to classify magazines because there was no legal framework for a quote-unquote dual-purpose magazine. So we ended up with... Go ahead, yeah.
Well, I was going to say that particularly applies to a magazine manufactured and marketed by Ruger under the BX25 trademark.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this, and that the way the RCMP decided to handle it at the time was any magazine that was designed and marketed, because the marketing is really the only way you can determine intent, and I believe intent comes up in the law. We'll get the law pulled up and we'll read it on the show before it's over. but that was the only way the RCMP could pigeonhole one specific magazine and say this magazine is designed for both a pistol and a rifle, and therefore the lower magazine capacity limit must apply. So we got screwed out of the BX-25, and all the while there were 25 rounders on the market, most of them from Butler Creek. They had two popular variants, the hot lips and the steel lips. One had plastic feed lips, one had steel feed lips. There were 25 round magazines that are on the market forever. I think they originally came out in the 80s.
Yeah, so before the pistol was designed, too.
Yeah, long before the pistol was designed. The standard Ruger factory mag was a 10-rounder, and we had the BX-25 come on the market, and it was deemed to be prohib unless limited to 10. Then we had the BX-25 times 2, which came on the market, and I believe both magazines were actually sold for a short period of time in Canada before the RCMP got wise and ordered the sales to cease unless they were limited. Am I wrong on that?
Nope, you got that right as far as I know.
Yeah. So now we're just in the situation where they were, as far as the panel is concerned, I think that if they were applying the law, in a consistent manner, the BX-25 and the BX-25 times 2, unfortunately, get snagged and have to be limited. But now what the RCMP has done is they've turned around and declared all 1022 magazines, all magazines intended for the 1022 platform, are inherently designed for the pistol as well, and therefore have to be limited to 10.
Yeah, even though I have a 110-round drum magazine by German Sport Guns that, if you look closely at it, says, where is it? Designed for Ruger 1022 rifle, Canadian model.
I can do you one better. We just talked about the BX-25. Well, check this out. Here is packaging for a BX-25 magazine made by Ruger. And on the back, it says, works with any factory original 22 long rifle Ruger 77/22 rifle, 10/22 rifle, and SR-22 rifle. There is zero mention of a pistol in the packaging, on the packaging.
And, I mean, that is one goofy-looking pistol, let's be honest.
Well, like I said, it was never really a pistol. They just had to market it as a pistol to get around the SBR laws.
Especially when they put the bipod on it. Like, that thing just looks stupid.
Yes, but under the U.S. definition of pistols,
yes,
because it's not an NFA item, because otherwise, like Tyler said, it would fall under the National Firearms Act.
Yeah, and then you get those stupid SIG braces.
Yeah. So that was Ruger's solution to not having to have to make an NFA factory item that added another $200 in tax stamps onto buying a short rifle.
Yeah, NFA items they're popular in some limited circumstances, but in other circumstances people avoid them because they don't want to have to register the gun.
Yeah.
Register it and pay the tax stamp, or have to go through the hassle of opening a trust, or all the other
nonsense. Yeah.
That's involved.
But so would it not have been easier if we just banned the pistol up here in Canada because it's ugly and who actually owns one?
Well, so those pistols have only been around since 2007. The 1022 has been around since the 70s.
Yeah. And it's probably one of the best, if not the best, 22 on the market.
I'll give you the best semi-automatic 22. I'm not giving you the best 22.
Ooh. The Savage 64, in my opinion, is by far the most accurate semi-automatic 22 on the market. However, it is horribly designed in that you have to actually remove the barrel from the receiver to get the bolt out to clean it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a really nice Browning bolt action 22 that I've had for years, and I love it, and it's accurate. But I mean, for the money and the availability, I mean, the 1022 is just, ridiculous. It's everywhere.
It's a great gun.
Well, and that's the thing. They're a great little 22 caliber semi-auto. It's a good varmint gun. It's a good target shooting gun. Everybody and their dog has one, right? They are super popular.
And very reliable.
Market parts for them.
Yeah. You can get all kinds of body kits for them, too. You can make them look like an MP5 or a G36 and all kinds of other nonsense.
Those guys making super nice wood stocks too for them.
Yeah.
So I got to know, what is Tyler doing to make a ruckus? Because I'm going to have to edit a bunch of the sound out.
I'm not the one making the noise. It's been Marty the whole time. Don't pin this on me. I was just fetching my rifle because I spotted it in the corner of the room. I have three 10-round magazines coupled together. Only a matter of time before the RCMP says that's prohibited too. And then here is the Butler Creek magazine in question, 25-rounder. I'm gonna go commit some murder now. See ya. Nice knowing you guys.
I have to edit this. Okay, so the big thing with this took effect on July 18th, courtesy of the Moncton Fish and Game Association sending out an email to their membership that went to a very wide group of Canadians saying that the RCMP had contacted Green Diamond Outfitters in New Brunswick, who contacted the Moncton Fish and Game Association to let them know, oh, it's Gavin that's making a ruckus.
Obviously. There's Tyler, too, though. And Marty, of course. We just can't see him because he doesn't believe in social media or webcams.
I believe in having better internet. It's just better internet doesn't exist.
Moncton Fish and Game, etc., etc. So,
all right, before you go on, has there been an actual official statement from RCMP that anybody has?
Yeah, so
or is this,
I'm getting
is this all kind of third hand through the Moncton Fish and Game?
Well, so it started out last week as third hand through Moncton Fish and Game, who said that Green Diamond Outfitters were the ones that were told by the New Brunswick CFO to pull their inventory of 1022 magazines, and also that Cabela's and Bass Pro had been contacted by the CFO RCMP and been given a similar directive. I don't take things for granted when they're on the internet because, anything can be attributed to anyone. So late last week, I want to say it was Friday, there was a letter coming from RCMP E Division, which is the East Coast Division, explaining their... I'm not even going to call it their rationale. Explaining clarifying the 1022 magazine debacle. So their opinion is any 1022 magazine that exceeds a 10-shot capacity is a prohibited device.
Yeah. So there was also the people from Caliber magazine called into the RCMP and they recorded it, and you can find it on their website. And they were talking to a lady who clearly had no idea what's going on. Like, she's reading the regulations and it keeps going back to the pistol, and she's like, well, why does it keep referencing the pistol when you're talking about a rifle? So she had no idea what she was talking about.
Well, yeah, it's a safe assumption that anybody that works in the call center doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
The only thing that I've seen that looks moderately official is this E-Division broadcast notice from the RCMP that has redacted information that I think can be attributed to the chief firearms examiner in Ottawa, but that's speculation on my part. I don't know for sure, but I have a strong opinion that it's the fellow that runs the RCMP firearms lab that is attributed to this broadcast.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Interestingly enough, no other RCMP division has leaked this similar broadcast for their particular jurisdiction. So, for example, John Hipwell that runs Wolverine Shooting Supplies out west, he falls into D Division. And John has reported that over the weekend, up till the weekend, they had received no official confirmation from the RCMP regarding the status of any sort of 1022 magazines, but also that he falls into D Division. So this could be a case of the RCMP CFO in New Brunswick making up the rules as they go.
Because, every store I've seen near me that sells over-capacity or high-capacity magazines is still selling them other than Cabela's and, I guess, Bass Pro.
Well, okay, so interesting experiment. Today I went on the Questar website and I brought a high-capacity Ruger 1022 magazine, and I have received a Canada Post shipping notice.
Yeah.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm totally going to own this because come and take it.
Well, that, and according to that notice, we have like a month to pin it anyways, so...
Well, okay, so that's part of the E-Division broadcast. So their clarification of the issue is that any 10/22 magazine exceeding 10 shots is a prohibited device. But they also state that this is a regulatory voluntary issue of possession to allow pinning. So the way that I understand that, that means they're giving you the option to maintain ownership of the magazine, provided that it is in compliance, that you pin it to 10 rounds, just like you would with, a pistol mag.
At which point it becomes an unregulated item.
Exactly, it becomes an unregulated item. Now, they are also saying that they're giving a 30-day wait time for the voluntary pinning to occur, so should a law enforcement officer find you in possession of a prohibited, under their current interpretation of the law, a prohibited 10/22 magazine, you have 30 days to voluntarily pin the magazine, at which point the officer is to follow up with you and NWEST, which is the group that looks after firearms identification for the RCMP. And they also expressly state that the removal of the pin constitutes criminal intent, and the officer at that point should seize the magazine and charge the owner. They also make a very interesting point midway through the bulletin that the possession of a criminal device under Section 84, Part 4 of the Criminal Code of Canada is not recommended as a standalone charge, which I think is really telling about this, because that means that the RCMP hasn't got the balls to charge Canadians for simply possessing a high-capacity 10/22 magazine. They don't feel that the charge would stick, or they wouldn't put that language in.
Yeah, and reading the law, the punishment for possession of a prohibited device. Every person who commits an offense under subsection 1 or 2 is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable, A, in the case of a first offense, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years. There's no minimum sentence specified here in this text. In section B, it then specifies in the case of a second offense to be imprisoned for a term not exceeding 10 years and to a minimum punishment or imprisonment of 1 year. So it's not until the second offense where you actually run into mandatory minimums, providing that laws.justice.gc.ca is up to date. That's kind of what we're looking at. So I understand kind of where that line of reasoning is coming from, because you get this in front of the judge and it doesn't even, you've got this totally innocent, lawfully acquired item, and then the law doesn't even mandate a minimum sentence. So they're probably just going to throw it out and say, at worst, just seize and destroy the magazine and everybody go home. Like, there's no need to send somebody to prison over it.
Yeah.
Well, it's an indictable offense, right? So that means you get the option for trial by jury, right?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, that's something I want to get into in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's important that it's denoted as an indictable offense, because that changes the way the law works.
Yeah.
That's
just to, I guess, gives a little bit more context. I believe I saw something like there's 1 million or so, give or take, the estimate of the Butler Creek magazines in Canada.
Yeah, I think I read something similar. It was about 1 million that they think have been imported, because you don't have to track magazine sales and importation.
And they've been selling for anywhere between $19 and $40 a piece.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of money.
Yeah. Not to mention, the tax dollars that were acquired on top of that.
Well, they already have the tax dollars, though, so.
Oh, I know, but
you can't dangle that carrot.
No, but like that's part of my point, though, right? Is like these are items that we've all legally purchased and paid our tax dollars on, and now they want to turn around and tell us that these are prohibited, but they're not offering to at least give me back my tax dollars.
That's correct.
Right? So they've profited on it, and now they're penalizing us.
Hypothetical, I guess, for the panel. Why do we suppose that the RCMP has decided that as of last week, magazines that have been in the country for decades and a pistol that's been in the country for the better part of 8 years is suddenly a threat to society and we need to prohibit them?
Because there was an article in, I believe, I don't know, on the CBC website about an Assault 22 that had exactly this setup. They're probably just a couple of months behind reading their news.
Yeah. I would like to see what would happen when this gets to the courts. There are two angles that can be readily exploited by gun owners. Obviously, the RCMP are just straight up wrong because the Butler Creek magazines were designed prior to the pistol. The law specifically, when referring to limiting pistol magazines, says any cartridge magazine that is capable of containing more than 10 cartridges of the type for which the magazine was originally designed, and that is designed or manufactured for use in a semi-automatic handgun that is commonly available in Canada. The Butler Creek magazines do not fit that description because they were not designed to fit a semi-automatic handgun. They were designed to fit a rifle. So obviously there's a way to get things thrown out there. But there's also a bit of precedent set by the Conservative government. Public Safety Minister Stephen Blaney enacted regulations that basically forbid the RCMP from changing existing classifications of firearms if they had been placed for more than a year. So we could conceivably in court get that carried over to magazines as well. If they were lawfully on the market for decades, then that standing, should remain.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Do we want to talk about the criminal code regulations under Section 3?
I thought you would never ask.
Okay. So to me, this is the part of the law that it's important. Section 3 of the Criminal Code regulations for magazine restrictions describes where you can use magazines and how. And that was the part that Tyler had just mentioned about the originally designed and manufactured for the firearm. So if the Ruger Charger handgun, pistol, whatever, didn't exist until 2007, again, why is the RCMP suddenly decided now in 2016 that it's a problem?
Because I believe that would be because they know that the House of Commons has their back and won't move to swat their hand away like the Conservatives did. Ultimately, I think this has always been their agenda. I think that's pretty clear. And now that they know that they have friendly people in the House, they know they kind of have a free hand to kind of pull these stupid kinds of shenanigans and give us hell. They've got 3.5 years left to do it.
So do you think this is retribution for losing out on the Swiss Arms CZ858 debacle?
I would say possibly. I don't think really mainstream Canada ever really got a hold of the Swiss Arms CZ issue, and the RCMP probably doesn't really feel like they've been publicly slighted. So maybe that's not really the motive, but it certainly could be. I think it's just them continuing along with their standard gun-grabbing agenda. They want to have a monopoly on the use of force, and disarming non-uniformed citizens is a part of that agenda.
That's Tyler. I've been told repeatedly.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead,
I think
Marty.
they're testing the water. I think they're testing the waters in two ways. I think they are seeing to see if the Liberal government does indeed have their backs, as they've said they will.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going after. Let's kind of take something. Let's take an item like this that's not going to cause too much controversy, and they're looking for testing our resolve, and they're looking at the resolve of the standing government. They're going to see how much outcry they get and how much support they have from the government. If this goes well for them, then they're going to move on to sort of a more extreme measure.
No, I do agree, and I do think that there are probably a number of narratives that are all potentially correct and not necessarily mutually exclusive when it comes to this.
Yeah, it just seems so weird that, especially after the last few things that the RCMP did concerning guns, that they actually seem to get right, that all of a sudden this happens. They reclassified, the 858 to, non-restricted like it should be, and then there was the other one with the Chinese gun that they've considered non-restricted, and now we can bring into the country. And there was another one too that I think it was with the AK-looking 22 that they finally decided wasn't an AK.
The Blaze 47.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm kind of with Marty when it comes to this one, in that not necessarily that they're testing the waters, but I thought that they were actually intentionally trying to cause public outrage.
Just to see what it would be?
By doing them all in rapid succession. Because, Patrick Kane, that asshole with Global, is going to write article after article about it, and like it or not, the guy has reach. They end up on the front page of a major media network on their website. So,
yeah,
I do have a bit of confidence in that these stories just don't seem to resonate in Canada, and it's not necessarily that a plurality or a majority of the population doesn't lean towards gun control. It's that they just don't have the motivation to have the political activism, because we just don't seem to have gun problems here that give them, the fuel to drive for that type of thing. But there's one more thing that I wanted to bring up about the total mess of our gun laws, in that the Ruger Charger is marketed as a pistol despite the receiver being identical to that of a rifle. I would challenge, if I had the money, or if I was implicated, indicted or whatever, I was implicated in a court case, I would challenge the very classification of the Charger being a pistol and not a restricted rifle.
Yeah.
Because it's not a new design. It's the same receiver as the rifle, so why is it not classified as a restricted rifle due to overall length?
Yeah.
That's another angle that gun owners can potentially exploit if we're willing to fight this to the bitter end. And I do think that we should be exploiting every avenue.
Especially when it's got a stud that you can mount a bipod on. Like, what kind of pistol has that?
I mean, we need to highlight that it is, it is labeled a pistol to get around to exploit, one avenue to make it more marketable in the United States. It's not a pistol. It's a restricted rifle.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's we're all up shit creek. The RCMP is definitely testing the water.
Well, at least 3 of us on the panel are felons. Or Andrew will be shortly once.
Hey Marty, do you allegedly own a 1022?
I do not own a 1022.
I allegedly purchased an alleged 1022 earlier today.
There's nothing wrong with your 1022. It's just your magazine that's the problem.
Yeah.
I allegedly purchased a high-capacity magazine to go with my alleged 1022.
But your high-capacity magazine is a low-capacity magazine compared to my high-capacity magazine.
It's not a measuring contest, Gavin.
Just to make things more confusing for anybody listening. And it's always a measuring contest.
I've got one asshole in my club who insisted that when you put a pistol mag into a rifle, it becomes a rifle mag. I wonder if he's ex-OPP, by the way. I wonder if he would apply that same logic, that if you put the the 50 round or the 110 round drum mags that are allegedly dual purpose into a rifle mag, that they just become a rifle mag and are therefore unregulated.
Talk about that for a minute, because it's not dual purpose. Let's look at some other firearms where this takes place. It's not dual purpose.
Well, I agree. I'm just.
No, I know, and I would direct your OPP friend, air quotes friend, to Section 3.
I would also comment that same guy is a member at every club.
He probably is, yeah.
And he's the guy that's doing really dangerous things with his holster?
Most likely.
Yeah. So, if this applies to the Ruger 1022 and the Charger handgun, does this mean it also equally applies to the LAR-15 mag?
It sure
LAR-15 magazine.
If they get away with this, absolutely. Yes, it's the same scenario.
So does that mean I'm going to have to pin my Glock mags for my JR carbine to 5 rounds?
Yeah, I mean, they will say that for the exact same reason, that the classification, like the intended use of the mag, like it's retroactive, like it goes backwards in the calendar.
Right. So, yeah, I have a problem with that because it's not intended use the way the law is written. The way that the law is written is that it is chambered for or designed for use in.
Yeah. Which has been the loophole to give us, like,
not a loophole.
It's not a loophole.
As designed.
Well, you know what I mean.
That's
it's not a loophole, though. Was originally designed or manufactured for use in.
Yeah, and in the RCMP documentation that they give out, they actually spell all of that stuff out. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the way that I look at this is if they get this through for the 1022, that means Glock magazines, Beretta magazines, SIG magazines are all pinned to 5 rounds because you can use them in a air quotes rifle.
Yeah.
Well, and the Beowulf probably is going to get pinned to like 1 round.
They've already tried to pin the Beowulf magazines. I have no doubt that they're going to try and get rid of Beowulf mags again. And the same thing with the LAR-15 magazines, because that is a magazine that's designed for we'll call it a pistol, but it's an AR-15.
Yeah.
Yeah. All you do is just pull your stock off.
Well, no, but I mean, from a technical perspective, the difference between a 1022 rifle and a 1022 Charger pistol And an AR-15 rifle and an AR-15 pistol, I mean, it's the same thing scaled up.
Yeah.
It's 22 versus centerfire. It's the same thing.
And if you look at the way the laws are worded regarding what constitutes a firearm, the receivers in both cases, whether it's the 1022 or the AR-15 LAR-15 pistol, the receivers are identical in all cases.
Well, that's the point that I'm making. The LAR-15 magazine is easy pickings after the 1022 magazine because it's the same thing scaled up.
Yeah.
So I would say us talking about what the laws are is pointless because they're not following what the laws are. They're creating their own.
Yeah,
so
but
us talking about what is in the Firearms Act is basically pointless in this discussion.
no, I understand that in the sense that it's going to get us nowhere with the RCMP because they obviously have such tremendous contempt for the law and gun owners in general that it's not going to make a difference. However, gun owners need to be informed. They need to be able to adequately articulate this issue to the normies because they might get wind of it, and you have to be able to articulate it and quote the law and reference certain precedents and things like that because you have to present an informed position. Otherwise, people are just going to side automatically with the badge. That's always the way they do. They give these people this blank check of credibility when we all know that they're complete idiots, that not only do they have a poor understanding of the law at best, but they actually have demonstrated like a tremendous degree of malice in enforcing it.
Yeah, and I was going to make that comment earlier when you talked about sort of complacency in our society about enacting more gun laws.
Yeah.
That, there isn't really a big appetite for it. Nobody really seems to care. But the flip side is true, is that when these laws are coming through, nobody's outraged about it. Nobody's upset about it. They don't really care. So these things go through.
I'm upset as hell about this.
Wow, I'm a felon. Overnight, I became a felon. And Andrew will be a felon shortly.
I went out of my way to become a felon today. I did not previously own a 1022, and I've gone out of my way to acquire one simply because the government is an agent of the government, not even the actual government, not the elected officials, but agents of the state have told me that I am no longer allowed to peacefully own property.
If anything, they need to have gun control laws enacted to control their own guns because they seem to be leaving those on the backs of their cruisers and driving off and just like laying in the street or wherever they feel like leaving them, and then they get a slap on the wrist.
So far, I've not seen any police officer charged for losing their service or duty weapon.
Yeah, not a single crime has been committed, to the best of my knowledge, in Canada with anyone with a 22 with a high-capacity magazine.
And you know what? It's not a high-capacity magazine. 25, 30 rounds is pretty standard for any rifle. Ruger Mini 14, can you get a 30-rounder for that? SKS, can you get a 30-rounder for that? AR-15. Remington 597. AK-47. All ubiquitous firearms. Yeah. 30 rounds is pretty damn standard.
Yeah.
Especially when it's as cheap as 22.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that cheap anymore, but yeah.
And if you can get them in stock, but yeah. But yeah, the whole thing is ridiculous.
So I agree. We're in quite the predicament, and we can't let it go because what actually shocks me is they didn't go after the LAR-15 first, because then they could parade the AR-15 photos around in the media, and they know that the restricted firearms owners are going to be a smaller group of people than guys who own non-restricted 1022s. It surprises me that they didn't go after these guys first, and then set a legal precedent, and then go after the 1022 after the fact.
I think that's a louder discussion. I think that's the issue.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if you look at the numbers, if they go after the big fish first, then it's easy to get the little one, right?
Sure.
And who cares about 22s? It's just a 22.
Who do you think's the more vocal gun owner, the guy with the 22 or the guy with the AR?
Probably the guy with the AR.
That's the point I was about to make, Marty, is if they do this with 1022s, how many of those people are up on the law, and how many gun owners in Canada have a 1022 because it's something they have on the farm, or it's something that Grandpa uses to hunt with once a year for a squirrel, or some nonsense like that.
They picked it up because it was on sale at Canadian Tire for $220. Yeah. Looked cool.
Versus how many people own AR-15s and are, we'll say, more in touch with the current laws around firearms, because there is an extra level of we'll call it training that's involved with getting an AR-15.
I mean, that's a great point that you guys bring up because what we saw that what we were able to achieve. I'm doing air quotes for the audio listeners. What could be done with regard to the CZ and Swiss Arms ban, which the Swiss Arms in particular, substantial minority amongst gun owners, even amongst black rifle owners, even a substantial minority, and we were still able to get the heat off our backs. So I would really, this is not like the rallying cry or anything. We'll get a more organized movement going here, but we really need to get the word out and do what we did with the Swiss Arms and CZ ban. We need to do that, 20-fold. We need to bombard these people. I mean, there's really, Andrew's got some great content lined up for later in this discussion. There are steps that you need to take to reassert your rights.
Well, I guess that's as good a segue as any. Are we good to move into next steps? Does anybody else have anything with the current state of affairs, or are we good to go into what's next?
I think we've covered it adequately.
To
sum it up, it's bullshit.
It is bullshit.
It's straight up bullshit.
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yeah.
You spent good money to not take it anymore today.
Is there any other aspect in our legal system where, let's say, police or RCMP can essentially create their own law that will put an average citizen in jail for up to 10 years?
But Marty, they're not creating laws. They're just reinterpreting their existing laws.
They're not allowed to recreate laws because Parliament's not in session because it's summertime. Which is why they're probably sneaking this one through the books, because there's nothing that we could do as recourse until the summer session is over either.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe before we transition to the next section, I want to ask a question about liability. Obviously, the CBSA and RCMP have kind of a mixed role in determining what is and is not legal for sale and trade and importation into Canada. Who is ultimately responsible if these magazines are indeed prohibited devices? Who is ultimately responsible for this, clusterfuck, and who's responsible for reimbursing Canadians who trusted the classification provided by their institutions and spent their money?
The solution, the answer to that question is very easy. It falls on to the importer, and no one except possibly the importer is responsible for reimbursing the owners, because the agents of the state will not take ownership for their actions. Full stop.
But they will cover your packages in yellow tape after they fondle them.
Was there no recourse for like a class action lawsuit, even let's say by the importers themselves?
I don't think that there is any legal precedent in this country for that to take effect. I'm not saying that that's not a good idea. I'm just saying I can't think of any case law where that's true.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we saw the same thing with, like, if you look at the Swiss Arms or CZ858, the RCMP said, nah, it's prohibited. You're not allowed to own it. If you don't like it, talk to the people that imported it.
Yep. In the past, hasn't compensation been offered for certain guns that were erroneously classified?
I think in a few very specific examples. There was another one of those AK-47 lookalikes, I think, where they did that, where there had been like a dozen that had been sold.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking like Swiss Arms CZ858, there was no offer for compensation.
Oh no, that's way too pricey.
Your property is forfeit. Hand it over to the agents of the state because they've been fucking it up for 20 years.
Hey, the cost of these drum magazines is going to go up the longer this thing takes.
Yeah. Now, the only reason I brought this up was because I would imagine the knee-jerk reaction of most gun owners would be like, well, obviously the onus is on the RCMP. Even if it wasn't their initial decision, they're the ones who have decided to make a problem out of nothing.
Yeah, well, they weren't enforcing it, so...
Yeah. But this is a dangerous thing to advocate for because the RCMP are still going to be in charge of determining the legal status of new firearms and other items. And if we set a precedent that if they fuck up, sorry, Andrew, if they screw up, they're going to be on the hook for it the classification process already takes 2+ years. They're gonna double
I
it.
just want to know, when the fuck did they get like black magicked back into making these decisions? Like, I'm pretty sure we stripped that right away from them, as it should be.
Under the
95.
Trudeau Liberals, there has been statements by the current public safety minister to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, that politicians should not be making these decisions, and the informed parties like the RCMP should be responsible for defining firearms law because they are the, air quotes, experts.
Yeah, and all
But-
gun owners
but
know
they're
that
not.
cops don't know anything about guns.
But they're
any
not,
of the
like-
minor victories we got from C-42 were undone within 2 weeks of the Liberals taking over.
No, the
Just flat out, they
C-42
just
was not a
reversed
victory in
them.
any way. The C-42 was not a victory in any shape of... No.
We
I
lost a
disagree.
bunch, and any gains that might have been there were nullified immediately.
All of the gains in C-42 were contingent upon friendly people being in government. There was no clear-cut victory for straight-up rights. Everything was conditional upon favorable people being in control. We've lost that now, and now the RCMP are off the leash again.
But like, you think they would have made a big stink about this, rather than just like sliding under the radar, and then all of a sudden the RCMP is classifying stuff again. Like, for the majority, air quotes again, of the people that voted for the Liberal government that obviously want more gun control, again air quotes, you think they would have been like, back in the hands of the RCMP, like...
You know what? It's kind of they sent out a mixed message. If you read through their policy book, they did say that they want to take greater steps to remove assault weapons, and I believe there was some mention of handguns. Although I think they specified illegal handguns in their policy book to get them off the street.
Where is this magical fucking street where all the assault weapons and illegal handguns are? Because that's a place I need to fucking visit.
Jane and
Yeah.
Finch. Jane and Finch.
I don't even think it's assault rifles, it's just handguns.
But there was very little. Actual declaratory rhetoric in the Liberal policy book on stepping up gun control, and that was always kind of my suspicion. Is that C-68 was kind of their baby, and as long as we don't have any mass shootings, they would probably be content to leave it alone. And the worst we would have to deal with is this type of bullshit. And so this is kind of what we have now. I'm hoping that we don't, the last thing we want, this is the other dangerous part of this situation, is the last thing we want are the Liberals looking at the gun laws and updating them.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, this is almost worse, because
there
was
is
no-
no recourse for this.
yeah, at least if the Liberals go and they made a bunch of shitty decisions, we could vote them out, or the motion, if it's that bad, enough Canadians are like, no, fuck this, it'll just die on the floor, Senator Crazy Pants' bill or whatever.
See,
But
223.
Yeah,
no,
this-
S223.
This doesn't even get there. It's just so this is happening. Okay, good, yeah, everyone, yeah, okay, here's the memo, done. Because it's not a
At the
new
same
law,
time,
it's a reinterpretation.
It's that much easier to undo later, though. If the Liberals go in and put things into law, like what we saw with C-68, how long did it take us to get rid of that?
Yeah.
I agree with the point that Marty is making, but the problem that I have with this is that it is not a law, it's an interpretation of an existing law. And as far as I'm concerned, until a law is published in the Canadian Gazette, it is not a law. Much the same way that I don't feel that Bulletin 72 is really a law. It's the RCMP's interpretation of the criminal code in regards to the capacity of firearms magazines.
It's not even an interpretation of the law, though, because these magazines have been around for decades before the Charger pistol. There's no way that...
ultimately, it will fall on a judge to make that interpretation, and so somebody is going to have to be willing to let that 30-day period lapse, that 30-day window where after they've been caught, to pin the magazine, and then subsequently be charged with possession of a prohibited device and go to court and fight it on that basis, in that it is not a prohibited device because it doesn't meet the definition laid out in the law, and the police are wrong. But somebody has to take the risk. That's always the way it's going to work, because the RCMP is the initiator of force. They're going to wave a gun in your face, and this is kind of something we talked about, me and my friends, when we get together once a week at the gun club, is the RCMP through this this edict. They've created a situation where, let's say, I'm shooting with my 1022 Butler Creek mag or a Black Dog drum magazine or the GSG drum magazine. I'm just, having a great time, minding my own business, not killing anybody. And a police officer walks onto the range and says, oh, hey, my department got a bulletin that, some of these high cap mags, might actually be prohibited. Can I take a look at it? And, my answer might be like, mind your own business or something like that. And
that sounds like something you would say.
He'll be like, no, really, let me take a look at it. And then I'll, tell him to go fuck himself. And then at which point he would then assert his authority as an officer, demand to take a look at the magazine, look at it, declare it to be a prohibited device, and probably because I was behaving in a belligerent manner, not be too friendly with me. And if I tried to, take it back off of him, then he would, push me away, threaten me with force, and if I fought him for it, he'd kill me. There are certain steps here where now if you try and assert, your dominion over your lawfully acquired property, you're going to get yourself shot. And a lot of people don't connect the dots between this little edict, as rustling and angering as it is, but it really it's a threat of deadly force. It's obey or die. And that is the way these people operate. And that's why we really need to explore now and quickly how we can fight it. Because there's only going to be a handful of people that are willing to say no and allow themselves to get charged and go to court. Because you might get 10 years in prison.
That's why I pay the extra $9 for my NFA and what's the other one, CCFR membership. So they will go to court for me.
But every affected gun owner, and every gun owner through this precedent of the RCMP, creatively interpreting the laws, and I think as we've established, they're wrong, has threatened every gun owner with deadly force. They're basically, like Marty said, testing the waters to see what they can get away with. If they can make a straight up incorrect statement and then have the full force of the law be behind that and have the elected government reinforce that authority, we're screwed unless we're willing to take steps to say no with authority.
Well, I mean, what's to stop them from going after an 870 with a pistol grip next? I mean, it's manual action and over 26 inches, so it's technically not a pistol, so it's not restricted. But then, it's got a pistol grip only, so we're going to call that a restricted device. Oh, and you've got a mag tube extension that's over 10 rounds total. Oh, in jail.
Currently, right now, the existing legal precedent, and again, obviously, the RCMP can just kind of do whatever they want. But right now, Blaney's regulation, until that's rescinded, basically has the 870 permanently classified as a shotgun, right?
Yeah, but if you put that pistol grip on it, it's all up to interpretation, right?
Well, yes, but the other thing was some case law also suggests, based on the RCMP's classification of the mare's leg, that they're of the opinion that something that is designed to be operated with two hands, it cannot be operated without a second hand, cannot be classified as a pistol, all pistols.
I will totally shoot a mare's leg with one hand, or an AR-15.
No, it's a single shot gun, it can't be operated.
Have they seen the Charger pistol?
You can't have the full...
That thing is sure, it's not that heavy, but that thing is goofy looking, and I would not shoot that one-handed.
Oh,
the person that gave it a pistol, a pistol FRT, likely never even saw the gun.
Yeah, they just looked at the description on the box and was like, pistol, okay, pistol.
Exactly, and they saw the tech drawings, and then the schematic probably just pointed them to the 1022, and they say, okay, this can't be easily converted to full auto, give it an FRT, a restricted pistol FRT.
Yeah.
But my point is that there are certain avenues that are currently in the system that we can exploit to our defense, such as the mare's leg. Actually, I believe the mare's leg is actually 24 inches. It should be classified as a restricted rifle, but it isn't. And it was classified that way kind of as a freebie. I don't know why, because they really had no reason to be nice to us, but that's what it is.
Probably because there was only 6 people that owned one or something stupid like that.
There's a ton of them, my Canadian Tire. The guy opens up the cabinet. He's like, "Here, check this out," and he just racks it one-handed, like the Rifleman, that old TV show. But anyway, we're screwed because ultimately, the police are willing to kill to enforce these laws. Are you willing to kill to resist them? I'm willing to guess the answer is no, more often than yes. So
I think the average Canadian is going to say no, but I have a strong suspicion that a big part of our listener base, and I would hazard to guess that a large portion of the panel tonight, this is a line in the sand.
yeah,
It's just sad that it's a 22 that's gonna be that line in the sand and not something like a bigger issue, if you will. Like, not that this isn't a big issue.
I'm okay with it being a 22 because the line in the sand has to be somewhere.
It's
and
true.
I would rather it was a 22 while I still had an AR-15.
Yeah, but you just think that they would come for something like cooler, you know, like.
Well, they already did. They tried it with the Swiss Arms and the CZ. They just didn't get the timing right. Because remember,
it's gonna seem funny if like there's a huge upheaval and like civil revolt over like 1022s. Like that just seems so ridiculous in my mind. Like,
well, I mean, look at the historical precedent. Like the American Revolution was in part started by a 3% tax on tea. Seems pretty petty, but you know what? Everybody has their breaking point, and it's just like enough is enough.
Yeah.
But who doesn't like a good cup of tea?
I like my tea in the harbor.
I love tea.
I almost say the 1022 is even more of a reason, right? Because if they're willing to come after a 1022, something as innocuous as that, you know that they're coming after everything else.
Well, yeah.
Like that. This is a tip of their hand saying, we're coming after everything.
Yeah, it's a gateway regulation.
I like that. That's going in the beginning of the show. It's a gateway regulation.
It really is. It really is. But you know what? I'm with you, Andrew, in that I was willing to draw the line with the CZ and Swiss Arms. I was furious. I'd never been so mad in my life. And
in my mind, this is no different, right? It's that what was that guy? Martin Niemöller? Is that his name? Niemöller?
Sure.
You're better at this than me. He's got an umlaut over the O.
Who the hell are you talking about?
The guy with the first speech. First they came for the whatever, and then they came for something else, and then they came for the Jews, and then they.
Oh, I don't know his name. I'll look it up.
But like, as far as I'm concerned, the 1022, the Swiss Arms, the CZ858, this is all the same thing. First they came for fill in the blank, and then they came for me, and there was no one left.
Yeah.
The,
First they came for the AR.
The 1022? No, This is a line in the sand. This should be a line in the sand for every Canadian gun owner. If you want to take something as innocuous as a 1022, where are they going to stop taking stuff? Because we know that the goal of the gun control people, being generous and calling them people, we know that their goal is the complete disarmament of the civilian population. Despite what everybody keeps telling me that they're not coming for your guns, that's a load of horse shit.
They're coming for our magazines.
We know they're coming for
us. This should be a line in the sand for everyone, gun owners and not, just from a basic property rights perspective.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Canadians haven't given us much reason to believe that they respect property rights or rights in general. Often, actually, if you talk of rights and freedoms, you'll be dismissed as an American sympathizer, and they'll just suggest, why don't you move to the U.S. if you prefer it that way? I believe in good government.
I've been accused of sounding too American by my friends and parents, and I'm like, so when did liberty and freedom become...
Yeah, like they have a monopoly on that?
Yeah, like nobody else can have that?
Exactly, it's total BS. And that's kind of, that's a culture war that we have to wage and win if we're really going to turn things around without any violence. And yes, Andrew, it's Martin Niemöller.
How do you say that? Niemöller?
Niemöller. Yeah, it's not bad. That's pretty good. Müller.
He's got an umlaut. What do you want?
Yeah. I'm surprised that you know it's called an umlaut.
I know lots of things.
Do you know what umlaut means?
2 dots over the letter.
Sound change. It means sound change.
All right, the more you know.
There you go.
I believe it also means that Andrew is an Ubermensch?
Something like that.
We can talk about how Andrew's becoming an Ubermensch. I went for a run today. It was exciting. I only wanted to die the entire time.
Yeah, Andrew's going to run a Tough Mudder with me in the spring.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this is part of my, we should transition into the next steps thing. But this is part of my, being a better Canadian. I want to be the hardest person in the room to try and kill, because eventually somebody is going to try and pull that shit. Whether they have a badge of the state or not, eventually somebody is going to do something dumb, and I want to be the last guy that they fuck with.
That's fair. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, you know.
So, okay, that's your goal. Why run a Tough Mudder when you can fight Gavin with swords?
It's true.
I will fight Gavin with swords. I will run a Tough Mudder with Tyler. I will shoot shotgun matches with you. I wish to master all of the martial arts.
I actually do have aluminum swords that I can bring to the next shotgun match, and we can duel.
We cannot duel. That is a chargeable.
No. They're blunted, so it's not a real duel. It's a cuck duel, if you will.
There you go.
Can you duel as long as nobody challenges or accepts?
We can
not
just
a duel,
nod.
yes.
We
I
can just
believe that's-
nod
yeah.
at one another.
I believe that's called LARPing.
Yeah, that's when you use foam swords.
Yeah.
Man, I got a podcast on Monday nights. The entire thing is LARPing.
Yeah. So, well, okay, on the Tough Mudder thing, you're going to have tremendous improvements to your cardiovascular system that will improve your ability to, shoot your gun under stress. Your shooting skills will improve across the board. The conditioning, being able to handle the stress, persevere through fatigue, and your circulation benefits. It's just like there's nothing else like it.
Which one are you running? The Toronto one?
Yeah, we'll run the
Yeah.
Toronto one.
We're going to do the Toronto one.
Yeah,
They
you
keep
wanna-
asking me to volunteer to do photos for them, so maybe I'll do that.
Or you could run it with us.
Yeah, that
just
sounds a
run it.
lot
Wear a GoPro.
like work.
Just wear a GoPro. It's the same.
Just meet us for the beer afterwards.
No, I'll be there getting photos as you cross the finish line all tired and sweaty while I've already got a beer in my hand.
There you go.
I will neither be tired nor sweaty.
You'll be dead.
What sort of Ubermensch would I be then?
It's a good time. It's a good time. Anyway, so yeah, all authority is derived from the use of force or threat of force. That is how government exerts control. They have a willingness, like I said, the police are willing to kill to enforce the law, and most people are not willing to kill to buck it. So that's the situation we're in, and you're going to have to develop a culture of resistance in order to change the law undemocratically. And currently, through the democratic system, it looks like the deck is stacked against us. So we need to start talking alternative strategies. And this isn't the moment where I declare, a violent uprising, but it certainly needs to be a part of the discussion, especially because our issues revolve around guns, because that's the way the RCMP, in particular, looks at us. Like, we are viewed as a threat. We're viewed as a deadly threat. When they talk about
bad news. We are a deadly threat.
Yeah.
We are other armed people, and whether we're willing to admit it or not, the average Canadian firearms owner has a higher level of proficiency with firearms than the police.
Mm-hmm.
To a law enforcement officer, we are a threat.
Although, to be fair, and I know I've said this in another episode, the IDF uses the 1022 as a less than lethal option. I'm just saying that could help us set some precedent in declaring.
Kneecaps for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, just to give you the idea of the forces arrayed against us, as of 2014, there were just under 70,000 sworn police officers in the country, and there are at least 2 million valid license holders in the country. So we outnumber them more than 20 to 1. So if Canadian gun owners develop a culture of resistance and just simply say no, the government is literally powerless to enforce any of these edicts.
Okay, so before we go into the details on that, I want to bring up something that comes. It's a concept called the 4 Boxes of Liberty, and for our listeners that are not familiar with that, it's from a U.S. senator by the name of Larry McDonald. We're currently exercising box number 1. This is the soap box. This is where we talk and we try and sway public opinion, such as it is, because we're on the internet and that's access to public, and that's the best way for us to get our particular message out. Failing the soapbox, we also have options for the ballot box, the jury box, and finally the ammunition box. The ballot box, I think, has already failed us in this country, that we have a liberal government that we're stuck with for another 3 years.
And only less than 1/5 of Canadians voted for them.
But in their mind, that's a plurality, and it's sufficient to change the electoral system in our country, so they can retain power indefinitely.
Yep.
The jury box one is actually the next one that I'd like to talk about, because we talked about this earlier in the show. This is an having a prohibited device is an indictable offense. So it's my opinion that any Canadian that's called to jury duty where another Canadian is indicted for peaceful possession of an overcapacity magazine should find the defendant not guilty, because that would effectively nullify the law.
Mm-hmm.
If the state realizes that any individual that they send to trial in the case of an overcapacity magazine will be found not guilty because the jury decides this person isn't guilty of an actual indictable offense, they'll stop sending them to trial.
Now, we do run into the issue. Well, nobody's been charged yet. But we do run into the issue.
Been charged yet.
We do run into the issue where if somebody successfully does this, okay, yes, they set a precedent for future charges that will probably deter future charges from being laid. However, the RCMP, if this is their desire, and obviously by fixing a problem that never existed, have demonstrated an intent to crack down on these magazines, they're going to turn to the Liberal government and give them another policy paper like they did with the Conservatives years back when they cited the SR-22, the XCR, the Mini 14, the ACR, other black scary rifles that quote unquote slipped through the cracks. They're going to go back to the Liberal government and say we need to update these regs because gun owners are getting away with all kinds of stuff that the original law never envisioned. So we're still going to be stuck with the same problem even if we win a short-term legal victory. I don't think that's the final solution.
So where I was going with that was we've seen from some of the previous sort of firearms-related cases where the Crown has sort of at the last minute dropped charges, but not after sort of years of back and forth through the legal system, which cost the defendant thousands of dollars before they drop the charges, and they basically drop the charges before they get that decision that becomes binding.
Yes.
And they're just like you said, once you get that decision, that becomes sort of precedent. Well, they also know that, and they are willing to avoid that. So they'll persecute you and run you through the legal system, costing you tens of thousands of dollars, and then withdraw the charge at the last minute to avoid that decision.
Absolutely, and this is where the chain of accountability breaks down. There's no law in the books that basically puts the gears to Crown prosecutors for filing frivolous charges. So we would have, for example, Ian Thompson, very prominent case. I'm sure everybody's more or less familiar with it. You've got a Crown prosecutor that basically filed like total bullshit charges. They never stood a chance of sticking, but yet they dragged his ass through the courts for 2 years, and I think he ended up with about $60,000 in legal bills, and he was on the hook to pay them. And the onus is on him to countersue for damages and legal fees. It's not like the government is forced to pay after having dragged him to court over nothing, no offense. So maybe it would be worth our while and efforts to lobby the government to change the regulations in that respect, and that when Crown attorneys file frivolous charges, they're on the hook, and not just their office, but them personally. Like there's no personal accountability when it comes to government, and that's one of the reasons
they get their salary either way.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why we have this situation. The chain of accountability breaks down. Nobody is personally responsible for their personal discretionary decisions to press charges.
I don't know how we change that, but you're right, Tyler. That would be something worth changing. Is it possible currently to countersue them after the fact, or I guess to just regular sue them after the fact?
It is, but bear in mind that you have to spend the money on your own lawyer to initiate and prosecute that case, and the Crown has more money than you.
And you have to do that after you just spent 2-3 years and $60,000 worth.
Exactly. And let's get another thing straight. You, as an individual, let's say, have just gone through a 2-year ordeal in the courts. You're $60,000, $70,000 in debt. The Crown Prosecutor, obviously, they're not feeling anything. They don't care. The Crown Prosecutor works for the government. You're a private individual, and the two of you are going to walk up basically to a judge and make your case. Who does the judge work for? Who signs the judge's paychecks?
Yeah, I see the point you're making.
Do you really think that you're going to get an impartial decision? These people are on the same team.
Okay, so I guess that leaves us with our final box in our analogy.
Well, hold on. I'm just sorry. I know I've been talking a lot, but I'm really passionate about this topic. The jury box and the ballot box are almost like not viable options because the courts and the Canadian people, to a certain extent, have roundly rejected the right to keep and bear arms. As a Canadian right. I mean, I think we can all agree that it is in fact a right. It's an inherited right from. First of all, it's a natural right.
The conservatives
have agreed right, and that's all you need.
It's a natural right, but also, like within legal documents, it is an inherited right from the British. Same descent that the Americans take their right from. But we just don't have the courts on our side, and the courts are always going to operate kind of through that world perspective, in that we are asking for privileges, not trying to assert rights. That is always the way it's going to be viewed until we win the culture war. So,
okay, how do we win the culture war?
First of all, I mean, have more kids. That's a start. Have more kids and get them into the shooting sports. Raise them right. Raise them to be critical. And take people shooting. That's really all we can do at this point. I mean, unless you're willing to pick up a gun and start, offing the government, that's all you can do.
I keep asking people to go shooting, but nobody wants to go. That's the problem.
That's surprising because you're down in Mississauga.
Well, that's because all the gun clubs are like an hour away.
Okay, that's fair. I took my.
Also, yelling at someone pistols at dawn isn't the same as asking someone to go shooting.
It totally is. It totally is.
I've had fantastic experiences taking newbies shooting.
I have too, for the few that have taken me up on it, but like I've put it out there and told some people, and they're like, "Oh, so where's the club?" And I'm like, "Well, there's a bunch, but they're all pretty much like an hour away." Mm-hmm. And they're all like, "Oh, yeah, no, I didn't want to like take a whole afternoon to do that." Mm-hmm. It's like, well, dude, I could take a whole day. I could take a whole day to go and do that and have fun.
You live in Mississauga, and we're part of that instant gratification culture. You're asking too much of them.
Hey, I'm far enough out of the city that if I drive like 2 minutes down the road, I'm in the country. There are farmhouses, bro.
Dude, just tell them that there are rare Pokemon at your gun range.
That might actually work with a few people.
See, I have great experiences. I took my cousin out. He works in Mississauga at a car dealership, and then he comes back on the Monday, and they're all like, what'd you get up to on the weekend? He's like, I went shooting with my cousin. Handguns, ARs, everything. And they were like really into it. They're like, oh, that's cool. I had no idea that you could even like own any of that. And that's part of the problem too. Is there's a lot of ignorance out there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, even
they don't even know.
Even amongst gun owners, and like I said, like the few people that I have managed to get out, all of them have loved it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people get sort of like, oh, well, I don't want to go that far away, and I'm like, well, where did you think we could do this? Like, I live in the city.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just shoot a gun in the city. But then, like, even legal gun owners.
Happen a lot.
Yes.
Well, legally, although there used to be a club at Union Station that I wish was still open, but even legal gun owners still don't have a great idea of what is and isn't legal in this country, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like my father the other day said, well, you can't own a pistol, can you? I'm like, yeah? Like, so could you. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, you have your restricted gun license. If you wanted to own a handgun, you could own a handgun. He's like, I can?
Yep.
That's crazy. I'm like, how is that crazy? Like,
you want a handgun, it's going to cost you a weekend of your time, about $240 in course fees, and then $16 a year ongoing.
He already has the restricted license, though. Like, we did it together, like, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, we were one of the last classes that had the, like, joint restricted, non-restricted in the same thing.
Yeah.
And he had no idea that he could go and legally buy a handgun.
Here's my question. What kind of gun shops is this guy going to where he's not seeing handguns for sale?
He doesn't go to any gun shops. He hasn't gone to a gun shop.
The only one I can think of is Bass Pro, and I refuse to shop there out of principle because they.
Yeah, I don't like shopping there either because they make you like take a photocopy of your gun license, and I ain't down with that.
You should burn that place to the ground.
Can you not do restricted and non-restricted at the same time anymore?
You can, but it used to be one course.
Yeah.
I just thought you couldn't do restricted, non-restricted, and hunting at the same time. Like, I thought you could only do 2 out of the 3.
Yeah, that's right. To do the 2 out of the 3, I think you can do non-restricted and hunting in a weekend. But if you do non-restricted and restricted, you have to do a Friday evening as well to satisfy.
There are too many hours required for restricted and non-restricted to do them in a Saturday and a Sunday.
Yeah. When I did it, it was one course. There was no restricted, non-restricted. It was just one course, and then you just decided what you wanted by what you applied for.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is still overkill, but I think is how it should be.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're going to have guns, you should probably do both. Like, just 'cause. I mean, because who knows what you're going to get into later in life, right?
I try and tell this to people.
I recommend every new shooter to do both at the same time. Because sitting through Axe and Prove a second time is just painful.
Yeah. And it's getting harder and harder to challenge to...
You can't challenge it anymore.
You can't challenge it.
Well, yeah.
C42.
C42.
That's
Thank you, Harper.
Yeah, that was the bone Blaney threw to the anti-gunners, and I'll never understand why conservatives like cuck to the left, as if the left is going to be like, oh, those conservatives seem like pretty reasonable folks. I think I'll vote for them next election. That's never going to happen. Like they hate your guts, you know. Like
it is happening in the U.S.
It's okay. Well, that's different. But we can't talk about that. It's a Canadian show. It's a Canadian show.
I don't understand why the conservative public safety minister would enact regulation that would allow fewer firearms owners to be able to go through the firearms possession system.
It makes you think that, maybe perhaps they're all in cahoots, and you really have no friends in government.
We have no friends in government. I think, I don't know if I've said this on the show before. If I haven't said this on the show before, I don't like the Conservative Party of Canada. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them.
That's not true. We have one friend in government.
Bob Zimmer?
Yeah.
Bob Zimmer's the man.
I don't trust the Conservatives. There are Conservatives that I trust, Bob Zimmer among them. Yeah. But as a party, I don't trust the Conservative Party. They're not out looking for my best interest. They want to get elected again, the same as every other politician, because getting elected into politics in this country is a paycheck for the rest of your fucking life.
Pretty much.
They have zero interest and zero reason to actually do anything for us as long as they don't do anything against us. Like, they know that the other two parties are actively working against us, so only thing they need to do is just not do anything about guns, and we're going to have to vote for them because they're the best option.
Yeah, they're the party that'll more or less leave us alone.
Yeah, they're the least bad option.
Allow me to LARP.
I'm good with the leave us alone party. That's.
I wouldn't mind getting the leave us alone party is libertarians.
Well, yeah.
But you know what? They've actually got a few backwards policies.
Actually been corrupted, but anyway.
Yeah, I was just about to say they've got some backwards policies that are not so great, and maybe they're not really the viable option that we were actually looking for. But let me LARP for just a moment here. New Hampshire, the state representatives there receive $100 a year. The legislature only convenes when it's necessary. It's not a full-time job. Like the government there is designed for citizen statesmen, not full-time politicians, and I think that model can be, successfully replicated elsewhere. Maybe we can transition to a model like that here, where we don't have politicians who literally show up to work every day just trying to think up new laws and regulations, like the manufacturing problems that require government to solve. because that's how we ended up in this mess. We had one high-profile shooting from some piece of shit whose father probably should have never been let into the country to sire this dickhead. And then we have 14 killed at Ecole Polytechnique.
Yeah.
14 killed. So I mean, really, I feel like those deaths are really they're really as a result of bad policy and not poor gun control.
Oh yeah.
Canada never had a gun problem.
No,
and we certainly didn't need
government
any
is the
law.
cause and solution to all of our problems.
Yeah, so I mean that's what it is. Government's in the business of creating problems that require government to solve. Never forget that. So yeah, non-compliance. I mean, we didn't really quite touch on this. The 4 boxes of liberty: soapbox, ballot box, jury box, ammunition box. I think we covered that. For those who don't understand that, that means like talk to your friends, go vote appropriately, and if you get charged, go fight it. And if somebody gets charged or somebody gets charged, go and support them in court. And the ammunition box is, whenever you feel it's appropriate, you pick up the rifle and, you do the Patriot thing. But when it comes to how you can effectively thwart this thing, I can't think of any scenario where, the government's going to parachute in and like take my 1022 magazines away. Don't comply. As it stands now, it's recommended that officers don't charge you. Just don't fucking comply.
Okay.
Well, okay, don't comply and don't do anything else that's a chargeable offense.
Yeah, don't do that.
So don't go.
It's not recommended as a
don't do
as
that
a standalone
anyway.
charge.
Yeah, don't do that anyway.
Don't go hold up a bank with a 1022. That's a bad life choice.
Yeah, don't fuck it for the rest of us.
Use an AR like a real man.
Yeah.
Yeah, commit the first crime with an AR in Canada.
Andrew, I see you put in the show notes here about the Conservative Party, which we just touched on 5 minutes ago. But did the Conservatives not just adopt a new policy on guns?
Yes.
They did. And we can thank Richard Wakefield for that. He's been on the show before. He was I'm going to go ahead and say, instigator of that policy. At the Conservative Policy Convention in, I want to say it was in Vancouver, British Columbia. We got to get Richard back on the show to get all the details about that. They have ratified policy that the Conservative Party is going to support Canadian gun owners.
It is a natural right, I think is the words, or a heritage right?
I believe they're going with heritage is the way that they're framing it.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, it is.
It's a national heritage. Yeah.
It is, though. I mean, if you look at, what is it?
Yeah.
Ancient rights and freedoms, it was in there. I mean, technically you had to be a Protestant, but...
No dirty Catholics allowed. In other words, being free is a heritage activity of Canadians.
Well, as it should be. We should be able to self-determine.
We used
and if
to
that
be
means
free. It's part of our history.
If you want to own firearms, you should be able to lawfully do that, provided you're not hurting anyone else.
Yes,
Just
I should
like
be able to
anything
self-identify
else.
as a firearms owner or not.
Well, exactly. Up until the point where you're infringing on anyone else's rights or freedoms, the government should have to leave you the fuck alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and isn't the way that Canada determines that is my rights end where your rights begin? So,
well, that's the way I'd like it to be determined, but I don't think that's the way our government currently does that.
Well, that's how it's supposed to be. Like, that's typically, I find, what defines the difference between the U.S. and Canada. In the U.S., you have the right to do this, right? Whereas in Canada, we kind of change that a little bit and say, my rights end where yours begin, which is effectively the same thing, but implies that, sometimes there's some conflict and we may need to talk about some shit.
Yeah, you start getting into the folds of the law, and you will find that virtually every declaration of a right or even a privilege is always juxtaposed with a phrase that goes a little something like, except when an officer or judge on reasonable grounds believes this to not be in the public interest. You will everything that you feel that you are entitled to do or have a right to do always has an asterisk at the end.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that in general, because there are cases where, we'll say judges. I don't like the way that our legal system works in Canada, because I don't like the fact that we have judges that are like judges for life.
We should elect them. We need to elect them.
Judges should be elected. as should chief law enforcement officers.
Yes.
That should not be a political appointment. Because, much like being a politician in this country, it's a paycheck for life. I digress. I don't think that judges, or rather, I do think that judges, chief law enforcement officers, etc., should have the ability to determine, in reasonable cases, and I hate the word reasonable, and I don't like that I'm using it, but it is the correct word if the left could stop bastardizing it and let it be used the way that it was meant. There are reasonable cases where certain people should be barred from certain privileges and or rights. For example, if you're not mentally sound, you should be barred the right to own firearms, in my opinion. I don't think that it should come down to a judge to have to tell your family that, hey, Uncle Larry isn't quite right. Maybe he shouldn't have guns? But if your family is absent and for whatever reason someone in the apparatus of the state needs to tell you that, fine. Let's have a legal recourse where a judge can deem you to be unfit for certain rights or privileges.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I'm obviously miffed that it's abused. It's essentially abused.
Yeah, we're talking about actual threats to public safety, not supposed potentially at some point in time they may eventually sort of maybe kind of decide to do something bad if they feel like it.
And I'm with Andrew in the sense that, I have a hard time imagining like a perfect system, but I can certainly imagine a better way of doing it.
Well, that's what I mean. Really, if we could get like a libertarian, anarcho-capitalist minarchy, I'd be all for that. But that's not realistic.
Baby. That's all we need.
But that's not realistic within the terms of our current construct. You can't have that because there are too many fucking normies.
Yeah, like I do believe that we need somebody that's looking big picture and kind of being like, okay, this is what the East is doing, this is what the West is doing, and this is kind of how we're doing it, just to keep everybody on track, if nothing else, right? Be accountable, but keep us on track.
Sure.
Right, like certain things we need a little bit bigger picture, but as little as possible.
Well, that's why I advocate the decentralization aspect and minarchy of government.
Yeah, like 6 guys. That's all we need. 6 guys.
One guy in a room deciding who to nuke. That's,
no. I'm pretty sure that's Russia.
I don't know if it's quite that small, but
yeah, that's Russia. That's how Russia works.
Ron Swanson's system is the guy is determined by some sort of like physical contest, like a combat
feats of strength. Thing. Thunderdome.
No, I mean, like the whole argument for minarchy and decentralizing government, you pursue that to its fullest form, and ultimately you revert back to the absolute authority of the individual, and that the individual should have, basically supreme authority over their person in all cases that are practical. Obviously, like we run into issues with, say, intoxicating substances, where you can obviously have the right to ingest whatever you want. But if by doing so, your consciousness is altered and you become a danger to those around you, now we have a problem. So
in my case, I think that's covered by the whole your rights end where mine start argument. If you want to go and do magic mushrooms in the privacy and comfort of your own domicile,
exactly,
do magic mushrooms. If you decide to do magic mushrooms downtown and you start trying to eat people, then I'm going to shoot you.
Yeah, don't be munching on them while you're driving home from work, right?
Yeah. So, and if you are going to be doing that in public and chasing little gnomes around, that's fine. But if you're going to get all aggro up in my face, bro, that's a different story. Then I have the right to put you down.
Okay, so at least 3 people on this panel have 1022 systems with potentially affected magazines. Anybody have any plans to kill anybody tonight? I don't think so.
I wasn't planning on it, but I mean it's still early, so.
Yeah, I could still pencil somebody in. Like, what time are we going to finish?
If you read the language of the RCMP memo, they cite that these magazines could pose a danger to officer and public safety. That's the mentality.
No, it's not a mentality. It's a fucking catch-all. It's the same as unsafe storage. We can't actually find something to charge you with, so we have a catch-all charge. This is the same language. Is really what it comes down to.
Okay, I understand that from like a legal standpoint, and I think because we all have like the agency to kind of remove ourselves and observe from above the situation, that we can draw those conclusions. But how many rank and file officers do you think like genuinely look at this problem and say, holy shit, there are hundreds of thousands of gun owners that have like 25 round magazines. Like, how did this happen? It's going to be the Wild West. We're all going to get shot. Like, there are a lot of guys that see that as a legitimate lethal threat.
Bro, I'm deadly out to 1,300 yards now. So...
And this is, well, yeah. Congratulations, by the way.
with my
22.
Congratulations.
Well, no, but
you just shoot it on like a 45-degree angle. But,
yeah, I shot it straight up in the air and I got 50 feet with it. But yeah, like, it's so ridiculous, especially with a 22. It's like any body armor is going to stop at 22.
Okay.
So I mean, we're talking headshots only to really be a threat.
Okay. Well, just the point I wanted to illustrate was that this language reinforces the divide between law enforcement and civilian gun owners. And I tried to bring this issue up with Craig like a ton of episodes back, and that the gun laws basically make these two groups of people enemies. And that's a serious cultural problem in the country.
In my mind, it shouldn't be, because as legal firearms owners in this country, we are statistically the safest demographic. We really ought to be considered the allies of the frontline law
but
enforcement.
you never let facts get in the way of a good agenda.
But it's like not letting a good disaster go to waste. I understand that.
But yeah, like, that's the problem. It's not even that legal gun owners are the least likely to shoot somebody. We're the least likely to commit any crime whatsoever because we don't want our guns taken away.
Well, okay, so that's a causality thing. Is it actually
that's the only reason?
No, but like,
are gun owners less likely to commit crimes because they don't want their guns taken away, or is it just that legal gun owners in Canada are just inherently a better caliber of human being?
well, I think it's kind of both. I mean, it probably depends on the individual, but like, in general.
I know. I'm just saying, one way it implies causation, and the other way it implies correlation.
But I mean, like, some of those stupid laws that shouldn't be laws but are, that the average person may just be like, whatever, I'm going to just do this anyways, we are more likely to not do as a result of the potential of having our hobby taken away from us.
Sure, and I can understand that. For example, like driving without a seatbelt. It's not going to hurt anybody else but yourself, but again, it's a law, and firearms owners in this country tend to follow those.
Regardless of how ridiculous they are or not. Because we're used to following ridiculous laws.
We are used to following ridiculous laws, but again, I don't necessarily think that causation is correlation.
No.
My theory on that is if you were the type of person that wasn't going to follow a lot of those kinds of laws, you would already have some sort of incident on your record that would prevent you from being a legal firearms owner. So basically, in order to become a legal firearms owner, you already have to have, years of proof that you are a sort of an upstanding citizen type of thing.
Yeah.
I agree with that, Marty. I do.
Having missed the last 45 seconds of conversation, I would just want to add that actually the gun licensing system is maybe the next thing that will be abused, because there's no provision in law that says a non-restricted license must cost $60 and a restricted license must cost $80. Tomorrow it might be $1,000.
I agree. I think that is rife for abuse. But I also don't foresee our current government doing anything about that.
Well, maybe that depends on how well this 1022 thing goes and then the LAR mag thing goes. I mean, just to put my tinfoil hat on for a moment.
I think that's I think it's a good point, because it's not only is it screwing gun owners, but it also is another tax revenue for them.
Exactly. We know that our governments are cash-strapped no matter what province we're talking about, or whether we're talking about provincial or federal.
Especially with winning tax on tax on tax.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be like probably in next week's episode, but I'd like to thank the Premier of Ontario for deciding to tax a tax. I'd also like to thank the Premier of Ontario for making Ontario the largest sub-sovereign debtor in the world, and we've now exceeded $300 billion in debt. So thank you, Orville Redenbacher.
You just wait, Andrew, because we're broadcasting here. We're going to be regulated by the CRTC.
Fuck that, I'm on the internet. I can say what I want.
We're going to have to start going like pirate radio styles and like hijack one of those sea forts out in the middle of nowhere.
Well,
broadcast on pirate frequencies.
It's the internet, and as long as I can get online, I can change things. Check us out on CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. If the website goes down, give me a day or two to relocate the servers to another neutral country.
Switzerland, baby, Switzerland.
Can't we all like fabricate total BS native ancestry and like go live on a reserve where we're out of touch with the law? Like we're totally out of reach?
Don't you guys have your ham radio licenses?
No, we actually talked about this like a week and a half ago. But...
I have several ham radios.
But
I have several ham radios allegedly, but no license to operate them.
Yeah, I don't think that was on air, but yeah, Tyler and I discussed getting licenses recently.
You guys
go for it. It's super easy.
The website is fantastic.
Yeah, I took a look at it.
I've ever seen. It's like something like some kid like drew up on GeoCities like 12 years ago.
Well, that's because
Industry Canada say?
No, I linked him to the local hobby club.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that's so ridiculous about it is it's like the local hobby clubs that basically do the testing for your license for it. It's like, are you serious? So why don't you just give me one?
Yeah.
Like.
Well, that's the same as the firearms.
More or less.
It's your local guy that does it.
Yeah, but I've actually had very positive experiences with instruction. I sat in on my girlfriend's hunting course. The guy was great. I had a great experience with my restricted firearms teacher, Dan, at Shooter's Choice in Waterloo. He was good, except he was misinformed on magazine capacity laws. He insisted that restricted guns were limited to 10, not just handguns. I had to correct him on that. I brought in the law. It's like the second day of class. He really loved me. But I had
your girlfriend got her license. It's like brings in her fucking boyfriend, and he's gonna fucking be cock of the walk. Fuck her. Fail.
But I've had pretty good experiences with the instructors, and it's kind of my mentality going into courses. Like I just did Andrew's course like 2 weeks ago, and I always walk into a course like assuming I can learn something. I never make the assumption that I know everything. Otherwise, I wouldn't be there. And
I'm still waiting for Andrew to offer the VZ operators course.
Yeah,
it's coming.
that will happen.
You have to develop curriculum. It's coming.
I am willing to help teach part of that course because I have put many rounds through my VZ. And by that I mean I'll show up.
Yeah. No, the only point that I wanted to articulate here was that, say what you will about the gun control regime in this country, there is at least some minimal value to the instruction provided, before
for sure. Like, I definitely, I think that the courses that we have to take, as ridiculous as it seems sometimes, and as, I don't know, minimal as it seems is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because, I mean, if you look at, like, in terms of accidental deaths compared to Canada and the U.S., like, if nothing else, when you go do your gun course, you realize that, like, keeping a loaded handgun in your couch cushions when you have children is a bad idea. Which should be common sense.
I don't think that this is a correlation causation thing. People in Canada are less dumb. We
have less fluoride in the water or something.
No, that's all that. Because if you looked at individual states, whether you require more state legislative training in order to get a firearms license, there is no distinct correlation to lower accidental firearms deaths. If that were true, people wouldn't accidentally get shot in California all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they also are, I mean, kind of freaky out there in California with their bullet buttons or whatever they've got to do now with that, like, separate the upper from the lower to drop the mag nonsense.
All I'm saying is that in Canada, the people that go through the legal means of acquiring firearms are already a better caliber of individual and are less likely to do dumb stuff with or without a firearm than other groups of people.
I'll agree to that.
Where I see it as an advantage is to the local clubs. Because the local clubs can assume that everybody coming in has a certain level of expertise
There's
that
a
they gain.
minimum level of understanding.
And so it's something that they can start off, and they don't have to do sort of the very basics with every single person that comes in, every time, because if they're there, they've gone through that course at least. It's at least something.
I see the point that you're making, Marty, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. The problem that I have with that is the government shouldn't be legislating what private organizations do or don't do with their memberships.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that.
wanted
I'm just
to-
saying that's the one advantage to it I see.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just saying that if you wanted to start a gun club today in Ontario and anyone could come and shoot guns, it's probably a bad business decision to do that, but I don't think the government should be able to stop you, which is what they're doing right now. Because they're saying in order to become a member of the gun club, you must already have a firearms license. So you must have attended our government mandatory minimum level of training.
But okay, how would you be a member of the gun club without a firearms license, unless you're providing the firearms there?
Not all gun clubs are strictly gun clubs. For example, my club is a conservation club. So a majority of the members are only fishing enthusiasts.
Wait, isn't the Guelph Club a rod and gun club as well?
Sure is.
Yes, but that's in name only.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like other gun clubs that I've been to in the U.S. where, yes, they're gun clubs, but basically anybody can show up because it is strictly like a social organization club. Like it's a group of people that have a
men's
similar
club that
shared
has a
hobby.
range.
Well,
exactly.
that's very true. Like at my club, like I mentioned earlier, we get together every once a week, and we spend as much time shooting as we do. Like we put the guns away, and then we'll have a beer or two and just chat for as much time. It's as much a social activity as it is like a shooting activity.
Mm-hmm.
But like my club has fish hatcheries. We have like portions of land on the Sydenham River. We release fish. We have to do a salmon derby. Like we've got like all other stuff going on that I'm not really a part of, but it's like a big part of the club's like revenue sources and all that.
Well, in the last club that we shot at for the Ontario action shooting thing, they had like an archery range upstairs, like inside, and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, East Elgin? Yeah, we got archery too.
Yeah, and my club has an archery range that nobody really ever uses, but
That's been my experience with clubs. Almost every club has the archery range that never gets used.
Yeah, but
All right, we should start wrapping this up because we actually have a bunch more.
Yeah.
Well, we have a bunch of feedback. The only thing I want to touch on that we haven't done with our sort of next steps section of the show notes. Please do not start any more goddamn petitions to our government. Please do not start any more petitions. For the love of God, please don't start any more petitions. If you want to get a politician's attention in this country, send them a handwritten letter. The three politicians that I would encourage our tens, nay dozens of listeners to contact, even though they're not in session right now because it's summer break, would be Justin Trudeau, who's our Prime Minister, Ralph Goodall, who's our Public Safety Public Safety Minister, and your local MP. Those are the three people that matter in this. And if you can jam their inboxes full of handwritten letters, don't send them an email. Emails are easily ignored. There's no mass to an email. Send them handwritten letters so that they understand the gravity of the situation. Be polite. Be professional. I'm not going to say have a plan to kill everybody you meet, but it's not a bad idea.
you don't have to follow through on the plan, but have a plan.
Well, I mean, like, let's just look at what's worked in the past. Our letter writing campaign with the CZ and Swiss Arms worked. So that's a good place to start.
Yeah. I mean, I've already sent emails and Facebook messages to Ralph Goodall. I have not yet sent a letter, an actual handwritten letter, but I will do that.
Yeah, dude,
Please
go to
send
Walmart,
them.
spend $1 on a box of like 50 envelopes, and then you can even set up your printer to
And
print
a
on an envelope. You just
and
print
a
the
bag of
address right on the
dicks.
envelope, and a bag of dicks.
Please don't
Stuff
use a
the
printer.
envelope with glitter, whatever.
Handwrite the letter. It has a larger impact on our
It does.
politicians.
It definitely does.
And it's free to send letters to our politicians.
Yeah.
So, for our dozens of listeners, please find a way to articulate your displeasure with this.
Yeah.
Let them know that the RCMP shouldn't be unilaterally reclassifying private property.
Yeah.
Let them understand
Definitely.
the level
Is
of
that a
ridiculousness.
yes or no on sending them the bag of dicks, though?
I can't hurt. I mean,
It'll be memorable. It'll be memorable. What a bag of glitter dicks.
What I did during the CZ Swiss Arms thing was I drafted a letter basically twice a week. I sent a letter to Minister of Public Safety, the Prime Minister, my MP, and the Justice Minister. I sent 4 copies of every letter, each individually addressed to these specific MPs. And as Andrew said, postage is free. Your cost is pretty minimal. You can even configure your printer to print the address right on the envelope. And don't let up. Just don't let up. And what I did was, I typed my letters, but I hand signed them. Yeah. So I'm not really sure how that factors in, but
do that, and then you could send letters, emails on top of that daily. Send Facebooks to those guys daily, like
faxes, everything.
Anything that you can think of. If you have their cell phone numbers, text them. Whatever you can do.
I absolutely want to overwhelm the politicians in this country so they understand the level of stupidity the RCMP is playing with right now.
Yeah. And literally, like, all of the BS you're going to go through to type up, spend 5 minutes typing up a letter because you're angry, you're damn angry, you can fill a page in no time. Type up a letter. None of that will compare to the headache you'll have to go through if your ass gets dragged into court. So it's better to nip it in the bud now and get them to back down than it is to deal with them after the fact when they're prosecuting you. So let's fight these assholes.
Yeah.
All right, let's go into rapid fire feedback.
Well, in the meantime, though, I do not own a rivet gun, nor do I plan on buying one. Just saying.
No, F that. Non-compliance. I think that we're all firmly on the same page with that.
That's Gavin's Leonidas statement right there.
Yeah.
Like,
I call it my Tyler Gerard.
Nice.
I'm honored.
Nice. Rapid fire feedback. We have iTunes reviews coming to us from Walper Style. Ninjas of Liberty, 5 stars. I've got to spend less time arguing with idiots on the internet and hang out with these guys. They're the friendliest, most reasonable, and educated regular Joes on the internet. The only thing that would make it better is an episode where they drink strawberry daiquiris and get some more guests from all over the globe. We'd like to thank Walter Style. He's a Libertarian Party candidate. I forget what riding he ran in. I don't know if he's listening to our podcast because I don't know that we are necessarily the friendliest or most reasonable or educated, for that matter, on the internet.
We totally are. I mean,
on the internet.
It's entirely possible he's listening to my other podcast.
The bar's pretty low.
On the internet on Monday nights at 9-ish Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah. It's a low bar. We got this.
Also, Gavin, this means you're drinking strawberry daiquiris in the future. That is a 5-star review.
It certainly is, and I look forward to it.
You know what? I think I haven't had a strawberry daiquiri since I was on honeymoon in Jamaica. I might actually have to go get some because this is a good excuse for a fruity drink.
We might need to do this in person because I mix up a mean daiquiri, I'm not going to lie.
That can be arranged. We also have email feedback from Gray Zone. Just wanted to get your thoughts on which AR 80% lower jig kit is best. I've been looking at the ones available from Delask Arms versus what's available from Canadian Tactical Cowboy Supply. Do you know which one is better in terms of ease of use, usability, with various 80% lower forgings? Not that I would ever really use it, just as an exercise. Unless, of course, we had
allegedly
a lapse of government, which could never happen. Hell, we've got sunny ways, and it's 2016 after all. Any info on anyone using one of these in the U.S., of course, because we're Canadian, not gun nuts like those guys down south, and variability on the raw forgings. Just looking for some hypotheticals as a brain exercise. I think he means viability, not variability, but in any event, have any of you gentlemen got experience with 80% lowers?
He means variability. He's looking for he's asking about consistency of the raw forgings.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Not viability?
It'd be variability of the raw forgings, so it's consistency.
All right, fair enough. Has anyone used an 80% lower on the panel? Allegedly?
No, I just have the
Of course
CAD
not.
drawings to make my own.
Yeah, see, that's my thought. Like, if I'm going to go to the effort to make one of these, I'm just going to mill one. Okay, so I looked at what's available through Canadian Tactical Cowboy Supply. You've got two choices. There's a polymer one, and there's a forged one. And I can probably even pull up the particulars. And through Delask Arms, there is a forged one. Using the ones from Delask Arms, I have a suspicion that the quality of the jig kit that's available through Delask is of a higher quality. I'm also going to tell you right now that whatever you buy from Delask doesn't come with instructions. So unless you're already like an entry-level machinist trying to figure out how to build an AR-15 on your own, probably not going to happen. Maybe
I do know that some of the polymer kits that are out there have some color change that happens when you kind of get to the point where you've milled out enough plastic material.
Yeah, Ares Arms used to do that, right?
So I don't have one, nor do I have any experience with one, but I do know that like you can just take a Dremel and kind of as you're sitting watching TV, you could kind of mill that out very easily if you so wanted.
Okay, so a couple of things. I would strongly discourage the use of a Dremel. I would also generally discourage the use of polymer.
But
yes, it could be done. Sure.
You know, in the event of government collapse, and you just have to have that AR lower receiver today, with very little resources, you could do that.
So, okay, let's look at these. I think the Delask one is probably not your best choice. The 80% AR-15 lower from Delask is 7075 T6 aluminum. Goes for $220, and the machining jig is another $145. The machining jig is probably of very high quality and will last you for many, many AR lowers. But it doesn't come with directions, and you need at least an end mill, and probably some other tools, maybe a drill press, maybe a router. So without like some basic level of machining, going to the Delask to get these is probably not your best choice. If you're a machinist, just build one on a CNC machine like an adult.
Yeah, I mean, even if you took machine shop in high school, you probably have the basic skill set to get it done. Just looking at the 80% lower forging from Delask, is the rear end of the lower threaded for the receiver extension? I can't quite tell. Are those tool marks?
Are you looking at the forging, or are you looking at the 80% lower? Because they are different things. If it's 220,
excuse me. Yeah, I'm looking at the forging.
The forging does not have a completed extension for the, what do you call it? It's the
It's not threaded for the receiver extension.
Receiver extension, thank you. It is not threaded. The lower forging is not an 80% lower. It's a forging. That's why it's so cheap. It still needs to be machined. So it's just a hunk of aluminum.
Right on. And the AR-15 lower, the 80% AR lower, hard to tell whether it's actually threaded or those are just tool marks from it being drilled out.
I believe the 80% lower has a receiver extension threading in it, as well as a magazine recess. It does not have the fire control components. So typically the way that the 80% lower works is that it doesn't have the fire control receptacle, the part where you put the trigger group and safety.
Mm-hmm.
Because 80% lower is really an American term. In Canada, there's There are companies that sell things that are called 80% lowers, but in Canadian law there is things that are guns and things that are not guns, and there is no in between. 80% lower is a carryover of an ATF rule in America that has to do with how much of the lower has been machined and whether or not you're able to transport it between states, because the ATF controls interstate transport laws. Yeah, that's a mouthful. So, yeah, the Delask one is probably a better build. I don't know, their 7075 T6 aluminum forgings are probably a reasonable quality. I've never had hands-on with one, and I have no desire to dick with one. If you go to Canadian Tactical Cowboy Supply, which is the other thing that Gray Zone mentions in his email, you have two choices. Well, we'll call it, yeah, two choices. One is the Polymer 80 Phoenix lower. For $180, you get a polymer lower and a jig and the appropriate tools, along with directions on how to use them to create your own polymer lower. I don't know that I would necessarily put a lot of faith into polymer lowers, although these Phoenix ones seem to be fairly well built. Basically, all you need to use one of these is a drill press. So if you have a drill press, or if you're very, very careful with a Dremel, you can probably make a polymer 80 lower for the Phoenix system.
Or you could just buy a 3D printer and the designs are free on the internet. I'm just saying.
Different kind of polymer. We can get into 3D printers, though. The other option with Canadian Tactical Cowboy Supplies is the Millsport Arms AR-15 8% lower, which is also 7075 T6 aluminum forgings. But that's $180, and then you need the Universal Easy Jig, which is supposed to last for dozens of AR builds. I think you still also need a toolkit on top of that, not just the jigs. And it's designed for use with an end mill. Or I guess you could also use it with a router. The router is supposed to be easier to use than a drill press. It's kind of expensive. I guess if you're going to make a bunch of them, if you can get a dozen or 2 dozen uses out of it for $220, the price per use is pretty low, though. So if you want to, outfit a platoon-level element with forged 80% lowers. Do you want to talk about...
I have a question with that, and maybe that's if we have any listeners that are machinists, but wouldn't a router be spinning at quite a bit higher RPM than you'd want to be putting a metal end mill on?
Beats me, I'm a computer programmer.
Yeah, I got nothing. I have a drill press sitting in the back of my warehouse that nobody uses. That's about it.
Yeah, this seems like a router, I'm assuming... Talk about a wood router, like your common wood router. That seems like that's a much higher RPM than you want to be machining metal with. But
I agree, and I think anybody with these tools and knowledge that would go and get one of these kits is probably already a superior machinist for what these are aimed at. So the other option, like Gavin mentioned, I think would be 3D printing. The problem with 3D printing is the type of polymers that are used. There are many, we'll call them classes of 3D printers. The cheap ones use cheap polymer and it breaks easily. See Liberator pistol for examples. But that doesn't mean that there aren't good 3D printers that use high-end polymers that may be on par with, say the Polymer 80 lowers that are, they look reasonably robust. The product video on the Polymer 80 website has a guy hitting it with a hammer and then putting it on an AR-15 and shooting it. So it looks, reasonably robust. I still don't think I would trust it because I don't like polymer lowers because I don't have confidence in polymer. I want my AR-15s to be made out of metal. But
I would say through my work, we have, let's say, relatively top-of-the-line 3D printer of current quality. And I would not trust that at all. The print on there is still not. It's not comparable to if you machine something out of Delrin or something like that.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like, it may work, but I would not put a lot of faith in it if it were up to me. Really, if it were up to me and I had the level of...
The question, though, what sidearm do you run in competition?
A Glock 34... is not the same thing as a 3D printed Glock 34.
I'm just saying, though, polymer
just
is polymer.
It says polymer. No, polymer is not polymer, the same way that aluminum is not aluminum.
No, but you see what I'm getting at, right? Like, there is a point where...
Yes, there's a point where there are diminishing returns, sure. But I would rather have a 7075 aluminum AR-15 lower than a 6075.
Oh, for sure.
Aluminum.
I'm with you on that. But,
Yeah.
I mean, some of the, especially like those polymer 80 ones, would I trust that to last me a lifetime? Hell no. Would I trust that to last me in an emergency weekend situation where I potentially might need one? Sure. But I would probably also be the kind of guy that, like, maybe has a few of those, just in case.
Well, and that's kind of that's what I'm looking at with like the Delask ones.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, not with Delask, with Canadian Tactical Cowboy Supplies. I'm looking at the wrong website. I will fix it in post. With Canadian Tactical Cowboy Supplies, I lost my page. I will fix this later. Yeah. So the kit and the tools is, call it $300. The forged lowers are $180. If I'm going to spend $300 just on the tools, I'm going to buy a couple of the lowers. Because, let's be honest, I've seen me build things before. It's probably going to take me 2 or 3 to get it right.
That's all right. That's probably within the tolerances of a certain manufacturer in the northeastern part of the province.
What are you holding up, Tyler?
What's the purpose of buying an 80% lower? It's to have a potential firearm that is unregistered. For the amount of time and trouble you're going to go through, and then open yourself up to the risk of you not being able to finish it properly and it not being a reliable weapon, just spend the money on a non-restricted firearm while you can, such as an XCR, an ACR, a Swiss Arms, a CZ, and then we don't have to worry about any of this nonsense.
Yeah, I agree. If you're going to drop that kind of money,
I don't know. There is a legitimate reason to have 80% lower. Some guys want to build things themselves.
Oh, trust me. Like, I'm looking at like getting moved into the new house, and I'm going to have like a garage that I can put a shop in. I would love to learn how to use a lathe and a mill, and I fully intend to buy both a lathe and a mill and learn how to use them.
Absolutely. I'm not dismissing the hobby aspect of it, but I mean, just strictly speaking, if your purpose is having an unregistered gun for when, I'm going to quote Andrew here, for when the feces hits the oscillating device, that why not just drop like really the minimal amount of money on a non-restricted option that, I mean, even you can have one that uses AR mags, uses all your same stuff.
Well, again, another argument for that would be I have my fully registered and legal AR, and I have a backup lower receiver. That if anything were ever to happen to the AR, I can hand them the lower receiver and keep everything else.
Yeah, like the way that works in practice is you usually, if they order you to surrender it, you can turn in the stripped lower. But if they come and take it, they take the whole gun.
Yeah.
I have enough spare AR parts that I'm sure I can probably gather
yeah, most of us do. Most of us do.
I have AR parts and I don't even have an AR.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. You're wrong. Fix yourself.
I get
I'm in
that
the
argument.
process of building.
But like, I mean, really, like my kind of mentality is if it gets to the point where they're like going door to door and seizing ARs, that's when you arrive at the ammo box stage of your liberty defense.
Yeah.
I mean, like really, like how much longer
becomes that much more better.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like really, I mean, if that's what it comes to, like, at what stage is it like okay to like overthrow the tyrants? I just, we all have different lines in the sand, and I think more or less we all want the same thing. We are going to have differing opinions on what constitutes like the end game and like what doesn't, but I think ultimately we all want to just be free and be left alone to live our lives peacefully. And this is why we need to have these conversations. This is why it's so important, because we need to achieve some sort of a consensus so we can present a unified front against the aggressors.
Yeah.
So we're certainly stronger together than, fighting amongst each other, saying, oh, surrender your gun, we'll make 80%. Oh, surrender your 80%, we have CZs. Oh, surrender them, we have XCRs. Like, you give so much ground.
As
gotta draw a
far
line
as
somewhere.
I'm concerned, as firearms owners, we have conceded enough to the people that want to take our firearms away.
Yep.
And once they've taken our firearms away, there's nothing to stop them from taking anyone else's property away.
Absolutely. Agreed. 100% agreed.
I can't have machine guns. I can't have suppressors. I have to register my restricted firearms. I can't carry a handgun. We've given up enough individual
You can
liberty
totally
and
own a solvent
self-determination.
trap, though.
Yes. We've given up enough individual and personal liberties that for me, the 1022, the Swiss Arms, the CZ858, all of those are lines in the sand. That if somebody tries to come and take them, I'm done. You're not getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I wasn't kidding when I said that I had my Tyler Gerard moment with the whole thing, because, I heard your story about, the 858 and the Swiss Arms and all of that, and you're just like, fuck it, I'm pulling the pins out of my mags, and that's kind of how I'm feeling right now with this. Like,
you can't be spreading unsubstantiated rumors like that.
Allegedly. And like it's so ridiculous because it's like I bought this legally.
Oh, dude, I was flipping tables. I literally flipped my workbench. I was so pissed off. Like, fuck it, I'm drilling them out.
I hate sitting there at the fucking range and reloading. This is a way that I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not even concerned about
if I was even remotely close to considering committing a crime, it would not be with a 22. Like,
exactly.
Like, I mean, that would be like the stupidest thing ever. I'm gonna go rob this bank with my assault 22. Like, come on, are you serious?
I mean, the SR22 probably looks the part, to the normie. But
yeah, until the cops and the RCMP or whoever shows up, and
they're even less likely to know
them.
what they're looking at. But I think historically the most deadly handgun caliber in the hands of the private citizen is actually 22 WMR.
22 has killed more people than anything else.
Yeah, it's still a potent caliber. You gotta go Magnum, but
Sure, for people that are unprepared. Right? Like,
All
but
right.
if the cops show up to a bank robbery or something like that, they're going to be wearing bulletproof vests. They're not even going to feel my 22.
Well, at
Unless
risk of turning this podcast into the Defense Against Cops podcast, we just need to have like a serious conversation about the reality of the dynamics of our society, and it's that ultimately it's the cops who makes these decisions. Parliament isn't debating it; it's the cops who makes these decisions, and it's ultimately they who enforce them. And
but that's the problem.
We don't really have any recourse. Like, we don't have any mechanism to have a dialogue with them and say, no, you're wrong. They will come. They'll wave guns in your faces, and you will have to then make your case to the court. And if the court doesn't like what you have to say, you're screwed, right? Like, then you're left with, well, I'm going to make violence, or I'm going to accept my fate.
But that's the problem,
that's the situation
right?
we've got.
The police should not be the ones that make the law. They're there to enforce the law. They should never make a law.
Well, unfortunately, under the system that we have, they have a tremendous amount of discretionary authority.
Well, especially when the government shuts down for the summer.
It more or less amounts to the ability to make law. In the strictest sense, no, they don't have the authority, but they really have the de facto capacity to make law.
Yeah, and that's bullshit.
Yep.
I mean...
All right. Any other closing thoughts? Because I kind of want to cut it with bullshit and then go into the outro.
This is bullshit.
It's straight up bullshit.
I'm using the first one. The other ones are getting cut out.
Fuck you. That's bullshit too.
Fuck you. It's my show.
It's a steaming pile of fucking summer horse shit.
Yeah.
Fly-ridden. Nah, it doesn't matter. All right.
For this jack-booted horse police.
Bring it back.
Bring it back.
Outro.
Bring it back.
Gavin, where's the best place for people to stay in touch with you on the internet?
Yeah. The best place to find me is on the Instagram. You can find me at urbex_GTA.
Tyler, where's the best place for people to find you on the internet?
Well, Gavin uttered my full name like several times, so I can be found on Facebook easily.
You can bleep that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
You
I
can
don't.
fix it in post.
The people who are going to do me harm, i.e. the RCMP, they already know who I am, so it doesn't matter.
We've already got drone footage.
Leave it in there, whatever. And most of the people listening to the podcast, I'm sure we have shared circles anyway. But you can find me on Facebook easily. I podcast more or less every 2 weeks with the International Liberty Death Podcast, and you can kind of check that out at facebook.com/Liberty Death Podcast or on Twitter and Instagram at Liberty Podcast. And coming soon at libertydeathpodcast.com. That's been coming soon for about 2.5 months now, and I think I'm going to stretch it out for another 2.5 months just to drive Andrew nuts.
Yeah, I just want to say that you're going to be a father before you have a website.
Most likely. So,
Marty, do you believe in the social media?
No, definitely not.
All right. As always, my name is Andrew. You can find all my work on everydaytechtool.com or Instagram and Twitter at edtactical. If you want to train with me, check out ragnaroktactical.ca. If you want to stay in touch with the show, you can do that at CanadianPatriotPodcast.com or on Facebook at Facebook.com/CanadianPatriotPodcast. Remember to like and share. We're still beating the International Liberty or Death Podcast by like 1. If you could please go ahead and like our page if you haven't done that already. And if you've liked the International Liberty or Death Podcast, if you want to go ahead and unlike that, I mean, I won't mind.
oh, you're going to be that kind of guy, are you?
I am
You know what? I haven't released the next episode yet. I'm going to remove all my plugs for your podcast. I might even remove you from the podcast. It's going to be me talking about an unnamed AR course for 40 minutes.
Just don't get Matt to be the one that edits that, because you might be waiting another 2 weeks.
He was supposed to edit. He was supposed to edit it. I recorded it 2 weeks ago.
You'll be waiting another 2 weeks for him to edit out Andrew.
Oh,
Did you talk about that course for 40 minutes on your own podcast after talking about it for like an hour and a half on this one?
we actually did a very good job about there was like no overlap.
It was good. It was totally different content.
We did CPP on the Monday. We recorded my show on the Wednesday, and I formulated all my questions so that there was no content overlap. It was really good.
It was very good.
A true professional. That's
I don't need to take that course now because I sat through that podcast.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Well, you
want things like
if you sit through it, you get one of these patches.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. People love patches. Swag is what makes people come back.
Dude, the course is good shit. It's good stuff.
I didn't even take the course. I was there for the morning only. Even I learned shit.
Why weren't you at the course, Marty? You just said you had an AR.
Yeah. Yeah, next time. I'll come out next time.
Next time. Remember, I love your hate mail. If you want to send that to me, you can do that at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Make sure to tell me how we've offended you and what kind of trigger warning you would prefer. Like we do at the end of every episode, we'd like to remind all of our listeners that you are the true north, strong and free.